the stream. So, we have not done this in a while. It would seem as if it's been almost a month since we've started doing, or since our last reading episode. So, yeah, it'll be a little bit weird to get back into it, but we'll do what we can here and move smoothly. Let me fiddle around with the camera here. It's got a weird effect going on. Can hear the cicadas in the background. And hopefully, you will not hear the screeching of the sorority goblins outside. They are out in full force tonight, chanting and such, like a cult would. Very typical of groups like that. That's very dark. That's a good place to leave it, I think. There we go. Yeah. Okay. Oh wow, that's something else, isn't it? Sorry, I'm just fooling around with this thing. Okay. Anyways, yeah, welcome. So, we are going to be doing something a little bit different tonight. It's a short story that had inspired H.P. Lovecraft, not only him, but Tolkien to write. It is a interesting book. It is 117 years old. It's called, and I hope I pronounced this correctly, it is called The Gods of Pegāna, and it is by a gentleman who went by Lord Dunsany. And I'm expecting it. It's not very it's the way it's written is not very it's not very traditional at all. It's kind of it's a little complex. If you've ever read the Silmarillion by J.R.R. Tolkien, it's kind of in a similar style. So if that may have been too hard for you, it may be difficult to read this one or listen to this one as well, which is understandable. It is a complicated story. And don't forget, as typical of the Cocktails and Cosmic Horror series, we do have a drink tonight. Call this cannot see it very well, but I have a Mudslide tonight. Chocolate, vodka, and such. Sometimes coffee liqueur. It's very good stuff. I kind of did something bad and put a little ice cream in there as well, but that's okay. I regularly work out, so I think I can get a pass. Very good stuff. Okay. And so, without further ado, The Gods of Pegāna by Lord Dunsany. Sorry, it's very hard to see in here, actually. No, I'm gonna have to fix the camera in here, since I changed the lighting up a little bit. I said without further ado, but there was, in fact, further ado. That's better. Preface. In the mists, before the beginning, fate and chance cast lots to decide whose the game should be, and he that won strode through the mists to Mana Yud Sushai, and said, "Now make gods for me, for I have won the cast, and the game is to be mine." Who it was that won the cast, and whether it was fate or whether chance, that went through the mists before the beginning to Mana Yod Sushai, none knoweth. Before there stood gods on Olympus, or ever Allah was Allah, had wrought and wrested Mana Yod Sushai. There are in Pegāna, Mung, and Sish, and Kib, and the maker of all the small gods, who is Mana Yod Sushai. Moreover, we have a faith in Rune and Sleed. And it was, and it has been said of old that all things that have been were wrought by the small gods, excepting only Mana Yod Sushai, who made the gods and hath thereafter rested. And none may pray to Mana Yod Sushai, but only the gods whom he hath made. But at the last will Mana Yod Sushai forget to rest, and will make again new gods in other worlds, and will destroy the gods whom he hath made. And the gods and the worlds shall depart, and there shall only be Mana Yod Sushai. Of Skarl the drummer. When Mana Yod Sushai had made the gods in Skarl, Skarl made a drum, and began to beat upon it, that he might drum forever. Then, because he was weary, after making the gods, and because of the drumming of Skarl, did Mana Yud Sushai grow drowsy and fall asleep. And there he felt a hush upon the gods when they saw that Mana rested. And there was silence on Pegāna, save for the drumming of Skarl. Skarl sitteth upon the mist before the feet of Mana Yud Sushai, above the gods of Pegāna. And there he beateth his drum. Some say that the worlds and the suns are but the echoes of the drumming of Skarl. Oh boy, sorry, there's somebody that thinks that they should let everybody hear their music. Sorry. I really hope that you can't hear that. It's a bit obnoxious. Such is the consequence of living very close to a college campus. Anyways. As one may dream, whose rest is troubled by sound of song, but none knoweth, for who hath heard the voice of Mana Yud Sushai, or who hath seen his drummer? Whether the season be winter, or whether it be summer, whether it be the morning among the worlds, or whether it be night, Skarl still beateth his drum, for the purposes of the gods are not yet fulfilled. Sometimes the arm of Skarl grows weary, but still he beateth his drum, that the gods may do the work of the gods, and the worlds go on. For if he cease for an instant, then Mana Yud Sushai will start awake, and there will be worlds, nor gods no more. But when at last the arm of Skarl shall cease to beat his drum, silence shall startle Pegāna like thunder in a cave, and Mana Yud Sushai shall cease to rest. Then shall Skarl put his drum upon his back and walk forth into the void beyond the worlds, because it is the end and the work of Skarl is over. There may arise some other god whom Skarl may serve, or it may be that he shall perish, but to Skarl it shall matter not, for he shall have done the work of Skarl. Of the making of the worlds. When Mana Yud Sushai had made the gods, there were only the gods, and they sat in the middle of time, for there was much time before them as behind them, and having no end had neither a beginning. And Pegāna was without heat or light or sound, save for the drumming of Skarl. Moreover, Pegāna was the middle of all, and there was below Pegāna what there was above it, and there lay before it that which beyond. Then said the gods, making the signs of gods, and speaking with their hands, lest the silence of Pegāna should blush. Then said the gods to one another, speaking with their hands, "Let us make worlds to amuse ourselves while Mana rests. Let us make worlds in life and death, in colors in the sky. Only let us not break the silence upon Pegāna." Then, raising their hands, each god according to his sign, they made the worlds and the suns and put a light in the houses of the sky. Then said the gods, "Let us make one to seek and never find out concerning the wherefore of the making of the gods." And they made by the lifting of their hands, each god according to his sign, the bright one with the flaring tail, to seek from the end of the worlds to the end of them again, to return again after 100 years. Man, when thou seest the comet, know that another seeketh besides thee, nor ever findeth out. Then said the gods, still speaking with their hands, "Let there now be a watcher to regard." Hello, welcome. And they made the moon with his face wrinkled with many mountains and worn with 1,000 valleys, to regard with pale eyes the games of the small gods, and to watch throughout the resting time of Mana-Yotsushai, to watch, to regard all things, and be silent. Then said the gods, "Let us make one to rest, one not to move among the moving, one not to seek like the comet, nor to go round like the worlds, to rest while Mana rests." And they made the star of the abiding, and set it in the north. Man, when thou seest the star of the abiding to the north, know that one resteth, and doth Mana-Yotsushai, and know that somewhere among the worlds is rest. Lastly, the god said, "We have made worlds and suns, and one to seek and another to regard. Let us now make one to wonder." And they made earth to wonder, each god by the uplifting of his hands, according to his sign. And earth was, of the game of the gods. 1,000,000 years passed over the first game of the gods, and Mana-Yotsushai still rested, still in the middle of time, and the gods still played with worlds. The moon regarded, and the bright one sought, and returned again to his seeking. Then Keb grew weary of the first game of the gods, and raised his hand in Pegāna, making the sign of Keb, and earth became covered with beasts for Keb to play with. And so Keb played with beasts. But the other gods said to one another, speaking with their hands, "What is it that Keb has done?" And they said to Keb, "What are these things that move upon the earth, yet move not in circles, like the worlds, that regard the moon, and yet they do not shine?" And Keb said, "This is life." But the gods said to another, "If Keb has thus made beasts, he will in time make men, and will endanger the secret of the gods." And Mung was jealous of the work of Keb, and sent down death among the beasts, but could not stamp them out. 1,000,000 years passed over the second game of the gods, and it was still the middle of time. And Keb grew weary of the the second game, and raised his hand in the middle of all, making the sign of Keb, and made men. Out of beasts he made them, and earth was covered with men. Then the gods feared greatly for the secret of gods, and set a veil between man and his ignorance, that he might not understand. And Mung was busy among men. But then, when the other gods saw Keb playing with his new game, they came and played it too. And this they will play until Mana rises to rebuke them, saying, "What do ye playing with worlds and sons of men, and life and death?" And they shall be ashamed of their playing in the hour of laughter of Mana Yud Sushai. It was Keb who first broke the silence of Pegāna, by speaking with his mouth like a man. And all the other gods were angry with Keb that he had spoken with his mouth. And there was no longer silence in Pegāna or the worlds. The chant of the gods. There came the voice of the gods singing the chant of the gods, singing, "We are the gods, we are the little games of Mana Yud Sushai, that he hath played and hath forgotten. Mana Yud Sushai hath made us, and we made the worlds and the suns, and we play with the worlds and sun and life and death until Mana arises to rebuke us, saying, 'What do you playing with the worlds and suns?' It is a very serious thing that there be worlds and suns, and yet most withering is the laughter of Mana Yud Sushai. And when he rises from resting at the last, and laughs at us for playing with worlds and suns, we will hastily put them behind us, and there shall be worlds no more." The sayings of Keb. Sender of life in all the worlds, Keb said, "I am Keb, I am none other than Keb. Keb is Keb. Keb is he, and no other. Believe," Keb said, "when time was early, when time was very early indeed, there was only Mana Yud Sushai. Mana Yud Sushai was before the beginning of the gods, and shall be after their going." And Keb said, "After the going of the gods, there will be no small worlds nor big." Keb said, "It will be lonely for Mana Yud Sushai, because this is written, believe, for it is not written, or are you greater than Keb? Keb is Keb." Sorry, I'm trying to figure this out because the light is very bright. That's better. Concerning Sish, the destroyer of ours. Time is the hound of Sish, at Sish's bidding. Sorry, the sorority goblins are screeching outside. I hope you cannot hear that, because it is not pleasant to my ears, at least. I'll keep going. Maybe my voice can overpower theirs. As Sish's bidding do the hours run before him, as he goeth upon his way. Never hath Sish stepped backward, nor ever hath he tarried, never hath he relented to the things that once he knew, nor turned to them again. Before Sish is Keb, and behind him goeth Mung. Very pleasant are all things before the face of Sish, but behind him they are withered and old. And Sish goeth ceaselessly upon his way. Once the gods walked upon earth as men walk, and spake with their mouths like men. That was in Warnath Mavai. They walk not now. And Warnath Mavai was a garden, fairer than all the gardens upon earth. Keb was propitious, and Mung raised not his hand against it. Neither did Sish assail it with his hours. Sorry. Make the sorority goblins read a chapter. That's funny. That's very funny. I'm gonna have to pass on that. Don't exactly want them to steal my thunder. Wow, they are really going at it out there. Absolutely insane. Anyways. Warnath Mavai lieth in a valley, and looketh towards the south, and on the slopes of it Sish rested among the flowers when Sish was young. Thence Sish went forth into the world to destroy its cities, and to provoke his hours to assail all things, and to batter against them with the rust and with the dust. And time, which is the hound of Sish, devoured all things, and Sish sent up the ivy and fostered weeds, and dust fell from the hand of Sish and covered stately things. Only in the valley where Sish rested when he and time were young did Sish not provoke his hours to assail. There he restrained his old hound time, and at its borders Mung withheld his footsteps. Warnath Mavai still lieth, looking towards the south, a garden amongst gardens, and still the flowers grow about its slopes, as they grew when the gods were young, and even the butterflies live in Warnath Mavai still. For the minds of the gods relent towards the earliest memories, who relent not otherwise at all. Warnath Mavai still lieth looking towards the south, but if thou shouldst ever find thou art, then more fortunate than the gods, because they walk not in Warnath Mavai now. Once did the prophet think that he discerned it in the distance beyond the mountains, a garden exceeding fair with flowers. But Sish arose and pointed with his hand, and set his hound to pursue him, who hath followed ever since. Time is the hound of the gods, but it hath been said of old that he will one day turn upon his masters and seek to slay the gods, excepting only Mana Yotsushai, whose dreams are the gods themselves. Dreamed long ago. The sayings of Slede, whose soul is by the sea. Slede said, "Let no man pray to Mana Yud-Sushai, for who shall trouble Mana with mortal woes, or irk him with the sorrows of all the houses of earth? Nor let any sacrifice to Mana Yud-Sushai, for what glory shall he find in sacrifices or altars, who hath made the gods themselves? Pray to the small gods, who are the gods of doing, but Mana is the god of having done, the god of having done and of the resting. Pray to the small gods in hope that they may hear them. Yet what mercy shall the small gods have, who themselves made death and pain? Or shall they restrain their old hound time for thee? Sleed is but a small god, yet Sleed is Sleed. It is written, and hath been said, Pray thou, therefore, to Sleed, and forget not Sleed, and it may be that Sleed will not forget to send death when most thou needest it. And the people of earth said, There is a melody upon the earth, as though 10,000 streams all sang together for their homes that they had forsaken in the hills. And Sleed said, I am the Lord of gliding waters, and of foaming waters, and of still. I am the Lord of all the waters in the world, and all that long streams garner in the hills. But the soul of Sleed is in the sea, that which goes and all that glides upon earth, and the end of all the rivers in the sea. And Sleed said, The hand of Sleed hath toyed with cataracts, and down the valleys have trod the feet of Sleed, and out of the lakes and of the plains regard the eyes of Sleed, but the soul of Sleed is in the sea. Much homage hath Sleed among the cities of men, and pleasant are the woodland paths, and the paths of the plains, and the pleasant the high valleys where he danceth in the hills. But Sleed would be fettered neither by the banks nor boundaries, so the soul of Sleed is in the sea. For there may Sleed repose beneath the sun, and smile at the gods above him with all the smiles of Sleed, and be a happier god than those who sway in the worlds, whose work is life and death. There may be that he sits and smiles, or creep among the ships, or moan and sigh round islands in his great content, the miser lord of wealth and gems and pearls beyond the telling of all fables. Or there may he, when Sleed would fain exult, throw up his great arms, or toss with many a fathom of wandering hair the mighty head of Sleed, and cry aloud tumultuous dirges of shipwreck, and feel through all his being the crashing might of Sleed, and sway the sea, and doth the sea, like venturous legions on the eve of war that exult the acclaim their chief, gather its force together from under all the winds, and roar and follow and sing and crash together to vanquish all things, and all at the beginning, at all the bidding of Sleed, whose soul is in the sea. There is ease in the soul of Sleed, and there be calms upon the sea. Also there be storms upon the sea. And the troubles in the soul of Sleed were the other gods. Many moods in Sleed is in many places, for he sitteth in the high Pegāna. Also along valleys walketh Sleed, wherever water moveth or lieth still, but the voice and the cry of Slede are from the sea. To wherever that cry hath ever come, he must needs follow and follow, leaving all stable things, only to be always with Slede, all the moods of Slede, to find no rest until he reaches the sea. With the cry of Slede before them, and the hills of their home behind have gone 100,000 to the sea, over whose bones doth Slede lament, with the voice of a god lamenting for his people. Even the streams of the inner lands have heard Slede's far-off cry, and altogether have forsaken lawns and trees to follow where Slede is gathering up on his own, to rejoice where Slede rejoices, singing the chaunt of Slede, even as will the last gather all the lives of the people about the feet of Mana-Yut-Sushai. The deeds of Mung, lord of all the deaths between Pegāna and the rim. Once, as Mung went his way athwart the earth and up and down its cities across the plains, Mung came upon man who was afraid when Mung said, "I am Mung." And Mung said, "Were 40 million years before thy coming intolerable to thee?" And Mung said, "Not less tolerable to thee shall be the 40 million years to come." Then Mung made against him the sign of Mung, and the life of the man was fettered no longer with hands and feet. At the end of the flight of the arrow there is Mung, and in the houses in the cities of men, Mung walketh in all places at all times, but mostly he loves to walk in the dark and still along the river mists, when the wind hath sank, and little before night meeteth with the morning, upon the highway between Pegāna and the worlds. Sometimes Mung entereth the poor man's cottage. Mung also boweth very low before the king. Then do the wives of the poor man and of the king go forth among the worlds. Sorry, I need to fix this again. It's better. And Mung said, "Many turnings hath the road that Keb hath given every man to tread upon the earth. Behind one of these turnings sitteth Mung." One day, as a man trod upon the road that Keb had given him to tread, he came suddenly upon Mung, and when Mung said, "I am Mung," the man cried out, "Alas, that I took this road, for had I gone by any other way, then had I not met with Mung." And Mung said, "Had it been possible for thee to go by any other way, then had the scheme of things been otherwise, and the gods had been other gods. When Mana-Yut-Sushai forgets to rest and makes again new gods, it may be that they will send thee again into the worlds. And then thou mayest choose some other way, and not meet with Mung." Then Mung made a sign of Mung, and the life of of that man went forth with yesterday's regrets and all old sorrows and forgotten things, whether Mung knoweth. And Mung went onward with his work to sunder life from flesh, and Mung came upon a man who became stricken with sorrow when he saw the shadow of Mung. But Mung said, when at the sign of Mung thy life shall float away, there will also disappear thy sorrow at forsaking it. But the man cried out, O Mung, tarry for a little, and make not the sign of Mung against me now, for I have a family upon the earth with whom sorrow will remain, though mine should disappear because of the sign of Mung. And Mung said, with the gods it is always now, and before Sish hath banished many of the years of sorrows and of the family, for thee shall go to the way of thine. And the man beheld Mung making the sign of Mung before his eyes, which beheld things no more. The chant of the priests. This is the chant of the priests. The chant of the priests of Mung. This is the chant of the priests. All day long to Mung cry out the priests of Mung, and yet Mung hearkeneth not. What then shall avail the prayers of all the people? Rather than bring gifts to the priests of Mung, so shall they cry louder unto Mung than ever was their wont. And it may be that Mung shall hear. Not any longer then shall fall the shadow of Mung athwart the hopes of the people. Not any longer then shall the tread of Mung darken the dreams of people. Not any longer shall the lives of the people be loosened because of Mung. Bring ye gifts to the priests, bring ye to the priests of Mung. This is the chant of the priests. This is the chant of the priests of Mung. This is the chant of the priests. The sayings of Limpang Tung, the god of mirth and melodious minstrels. And Limpang Tung said, the ways of the gods are strange. The flower groweth up, and on the flower fadeth away. This may be very clever of the gods. Man groweth from his infancy, and in a while he dieth. This may be very clever too. But the gods play with a strange scheme. I will send jests into the world, and a little mirth, and while death seems to thee as far away as the purple rim of hills, or sorrow as far off as rain in the blue days of a summer, then pray to Limpang Tung. But when thou growest old, or ere thou diest, pray not of Limpang Tung, for thou becomest part of a scheme that he doth not understand. Go out into the starry night, when Limpang Tung will dance with thee, who danced since the gods were young, the gods of mirth and melodious minstrels. Or offer up a jest to Limpang Tung. Only pray not in thy sorrow to Limpang Tung, for he saith of sorrow, it may be very clever of the gods, but he doth not understand. And Limpang Tung said, I am lesser than the gods. Pray, therefore, to the small gods, and not to Limpang Tung. Natheless, between Pegāna and the earth, flutter 10,000 prayers that beat their wings against the face of death, and never for one of them hath the hand of the striker been stayed, nor yet have been tarried the feet of the relentless one. Utter thy prayer, it may accomplish where failed 10,000. Limping tongue is lesser than the gods, and doth not understand. And Limping tongue said, lest men grew weary, down on the great worlds, through gazing always at a changeless sky. I will paint my pictures in the sky, and I will paint them twice in every day, for so long as days shall be. Once as the day ariseth out of the homes of dawn, will I paint the blue, that men may see and rejoice, and ere the day falleth unto the night, will I paint upon the blue again, lest men be sad. Sorry, I need a drink real quick. I hope you understand. Thank you. It is a little, said Limping tongue. It is a little, even for a god, to give some pleasure to men upon the worlds. And Limping tongue hath sworn that the pictures that he paints shall never be the same for so long as the days shall be. And this he hath sworn by the oath of the gods of Pegāna, that the gods may never break, laying his hand upon the shoulder of each of the gods, and swearing by the light behind their eyes. Limping tongue hath lured a melody out of the stream, and stolen its anthem from the forest. For him the wind hath cried in lonely places, and the ocean sung its dirges. There is music for Limping tongue, in the sounds of the moving of the grass, and in the voices of the people that lament, or in the cry of them that rejoice. In an inner mountain land, where none hath come, he hath carved his organ pipes out of the mountains. And there, when the winds, his servants, come in from all the world, he maketh the melody of Limping tongue. But the song, arising in night, goeth forth like a river, winding through all the world, and here and there, amid the peoples of earth, one heareth, and straightway all that hath the voice to sing crieth aloud in the music of his soul. Or sometimes, walking through the dusk, with steps unheard by men, in a form unseen by the people, Limping tongue goeth abroad, and standing behind the minstrels in cities of song, waveth his hands above them to and fro, and the minstrels bend to their work, and the voice of the music ariseth, and mirth and melody abound in the city of song, and no one seeth Limping tongue as he standeth behind the minstrels. But through the mists, toward morning, in the dark, when the minstrels sleep, and mirth and melody have sunk to rest, Limping tongue goeth back again to his mountain land. Sorry, one moment. Of Yoharneth Lahai, the god of little dreams and fancies. Oh, they spelled it differently. Let me make sure. Yeah, okay. Yoharneth Lahai is the god of little dreams and fancies. All night he sendeth little dreams out of Pegāna to please the people of earth. He sendeth little dreams to the poor man and to the king. He is so busy to send his dreams to all before the night, to be ended that oft he forgetteth, which be the poor man and which be of the king, to whom you harneth high, cometh not with the little dreams. In sleep he must endure all night the laughter of the gods with highest mockery in Pegāna. All night long Yoharneth will high given peace to cities until the dawn hour and the departing of Yoharneth will high, when it is time for the gods to play with men again. Whether the dreams and the fancies of Yoharneth will high be false, and the things that are done in the day be real, or the things that are done in the day be false, and the dreams and the fancies of Yoharneth will high be true, none knoweth, saving only Mana Yud Sushai, who hath not spoken. Of Rune, the god of going, and the 1,000 home gods. Rune said, there be gods of moving and gods of standing still, but I am the god of going. It is because of Rune that the worlds are never still, for the moons and the worlds and the comet are stirred by the spirit of Rune, which saith, go, go, go. Rune met the worlds all in the morning of things, before there was a light upon Pegāna, and Rune danced before them in the void, since when they are never still, Rune sendeth all streams to the sea, and all the rivers to the soul of Sleed. Rune maketh the sign of Rune before the waters, and lo, they have left the hills, and Rune hath spoken in the ear of the north wind, that he may still no more. Loud music. The footfall of Rune hath been heard at evening outside the houses of men, and thenceforth comfort and abiding know them no more. Before them stretcheth travel all over the lands, long miles, and never resting between the homes and the graves, and all at the bidding of Rune. The mountains have set no limit against Rune, nor all the seas a boundary. Whether Rune hath desired, there must be Rune's people go, in the worlds, in their streams, in the winds. I heard the whisper of Rune at evening, saying, there are islands of spices to the south, and the voice of Rune saying, go. And Rune said, there are 1,000 home gods, and little gods that sit before the hearth, and mind the fire. There is one Rune. Rune saith in a whisper when none heareth, when the sun is low, what doth Mana Yotsushai? Rune is no god that thou mayest worship by the hearth, nor will he be benignant to thy home. Offer to Rune thy toiling and thy speed, whose incense is the smoke of the campfire to the south, whose song is a sound of going, whose temples stand beyond the farthest hills, and his lands behind the east. Yarinareth, 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 which signifieth beyond. These words be carved in letters of gold upon the arch of the great portal of the temple of Rune, that men have built looking toward the east upon the sea, where Rune is carved as a giant trumpeter, with his trumpet pointing toward the east beyond the sea. Whoso heareth his voice, the voice of ruin, at evening, he at once forsaketh the home gods that sit beside the hearth. These be the gods of the hearth. Pitsu, who stroketh the cat, Hobith, who calms the dog, and Habaniah, the lord of glowing embers, and little Zambibu, the lord of dust, and old Griban, who sits in the heart of the fire, to turn to wood, to ash. All these to be home gods, and live not in Pegāna, and be lesser than ruin. There is also Kilulugum, the lord of a rising smoke, who taketh the smoke from the hearth and sendeth it to the sky, who is pleased if it reacheth Pegāna. So that the gods of Pegāna, speaking to the gods, say, there is Kilulugum doing the work of earth, doing work on earth of Kilulugum. All these are gods so small that they be lesser than men, but pleasant gods to have beside the hearth. And often men have prayed to Kilulugum, saying, Thou whose smoke ascendeth to Pegāna, send up with our prayers, that the gods may hear. And Kilulugum, who is pleased that the men should pray, stretches himself up, all grey and lean, with his arms above his head, and sendeth his servant the smoke to St. Pegāna. And the gods of Pegāna may know that the people pray. And Jabim is the lord of broken things, who sitteth behind the house, to lament the things that are cast away. And there he sitteth, lamenting the broken things, until the worlds be ended, or until someone cometh and mend the broken things. Or sometimes he sitteth by the river's edge to lament the forgotten things that drift upon it. A kindly god is Jabim, whose heart is sore if anything be lost. There is also Tribuji, the lord of dusk, whose children are the shadows, who sitteth in the corner, far off from Habaniah, and speaketh to none. But after Habaniah hath gone to sleep, the old Griban hath blinked 100 times, until he forgetteth which he be wood or ash. Then doth Tribuji, I don't know how to pronounce these names are so weird. Tribuji, I don't know, send his children to run about the room and dance upon the walls, but never disturb the silence. But when there is light again upon the worlds, and dawn comes dancing upon the highway from Pegāna, then does Tribuji retire into his corner, with his children all around him, as though they had never danced about the room. And the slaves of Habaniah and the old Griban come and awake from their sleep upon the hearth. And Pitsu strokes the cat, and Hobith calms the dog, and Kilulugum stretches aloft his arms toward Pegāna, and Tribuji is very still, and his children asleep. These are very interesting naming conventions. And when it is dark, all in the hour of Tribuji, Hish creepeth from the forest, the lord of silence, whose children are the bats, that have broken the command of their father. But in a voice that is ever so low, Hish husheth the mouse in all the whispers of the night. He maketh all noises still, only the cricket rebelleth. But Hish hath hath set against him such a spell that after he hath cried 1,000 times, his voice may be heard no more, but becometh part of the silence. And when he hath slain all sounds, he boweth low to the ground, then cometh into the house with never a sound of feet. The god Yoharneth Wahai, but away in the forest whence he hath come, Wohun, the lord of noises in the night, awaketh in his lair, and creepeth around the forest to see whether it is true that Heesh hath gone. Sorry, I need another drink. Then, in some glade, Wohun lifts up his voice and cries aloud, that all the night may hear, that it is he, Wohun, who is abroad in all the forest. And the wolf, and the fox, and the owl, and the great beasts, and the small, lift their voices to acclaim Wohun. And there arise the sound of voices and the stirring of leaves. The revolt of the home gods. There be 3 broad rivers of the plain, born before memory or fable, whose mothers are 3 grey peaks, and whose father was the storm. Their names be Elmes, Zanes, and Sagastrian. Now, Elmes is the joy of lowing herds, and Zanes hath bowed his neck to the yoke of man, and carries timber from the forest afar, below the mountain. And Sagastrian sings old songs to shepherd boys, singing of his childhood in a lone ravine, and how he once sprang down the mountainsides and far away into the plain to see the world. And of how one day at last he will find the sea. These be the rivers of the plain, wherein the plain rejoices. But old men tell, whose fathers heard it in the ancients, how once the lords of the 3 rivers of the plain rebelled against the law of the worlds, and passed beyond their boundaries, and joined together and whelmed cities and slew men. We now play the game of the gods, and slay men for our pleasure, and we be greater than the gods of Pegāna. And all the plain was flooded to the hills. And Elmes, Zanes, and Sagastrian sat upon the mountains, and spread their hands upon the rivers that rebelled by their command. One sec. But the prayer of men going upward found Pegāna, and cried in the ear of gods. There be 3 home gods who slay us for their pleasure, and say that they may be mightier than Pegāna's gods, and play their game with men. Then were all the gods of Pegāna very wroth, but they could not whelm the lords of the 3 rivers, because being home gods, though small, they were immortal. And still the home gods spread their hands across the rivers, with their fingers wide apart, and the waters rose and rose, and the voices of the torrent grew louder, crying, Are we not Elmes, Zanes, and Sagastrian? Then Mung went down to the waste of Afrique, and came upon the drought, Umbul, as he sat in the desert upon iron rocks, clawing with miserly grasp at the bones of men and breathing hot. Mung stood before them as his dry sides heaved, and ever as they sank, his hot breath blasted dry sticks and bones. Then Mung said, "Friend of Mung, go thou and grin before the faces of Elmes, Zanes, and Sagastrian, till they see whether it be wise to rebel against the gods of Pegāna." And Umbul answered, "I am the beast of Mung." And Umbul came close and crouched upon a hill upon the other side of the waters and grinned across them at the rebellious home gods. And whenever Elmes, Zanes, and Sagastrian stretched out their hands over the river, they saw before their faces the grinning of Umbul, and because of the grinning was like death in a hot and hideous land before they turned away and spread their hands no more over the rivers, and the waters sank and sank. But when Umbul had grinned for 30 days, the waters fell back into the riverbeds, and the lords of the rivers slunk away back again to their homes. Still, Umbul sat and grinned. Then Elmes sought to hide himself in the great pool beneath a rock. And Zanes crept into the middle of wood, and Sagastrian lay and panted on the sand. Still, Umbul sat and grinned. And Elmes grew lean and was forgotten, so that the men of the plain would say, "Here once was Elmes," and Zanes scarce had strength to lead the river to the sea, and as Sagastrian lay and panted as a man stepped over his stream, and Sagastrian said, "It is the foot of a man that has passed across my neck, and I have sought to be greater than the gods of Pegāna." Then the gods of Pegāna said, "It is enough, we are the gods of Pegāna, and none are equal." Sorry. Then Mung sent Umbul back to his waste in Africa to breathe again upon the rocks and parch the desert, and to sear the memory of Africa into the brains of all who ever bring their bones away. And Elmes, Zanes, and Sagastrian sang again, and walked once more in their accustomed haunts, and played the game of life and death with fish and frogs, but never essayed to play it any more with men, as do the gods of Pegāna. Of Dorajand, whose eyes regard the end. Sitting above the lives of the people, and looking, doth Dorajand see that is which to be. The god of destiny is Dorajand, upon whom have looked the eyes of Dorajand. As he goeth forward to an end that naught may stay, he becometh the arrow from a bow of Dorajand, hurled forward at a mark he may not see, to the goal of Dorajand, beyond the thinking of men, beyond the sight of all other gods regard the eyes of Dorajand. He hath chosen his slaves, and them doth the destiny god drive onward where he will, who, knowing not whether, nor even knowing why, feel only... They're going again. I don't understand why they have... I don't even know what they're saying. It's crazy. It's crazy. knowing not whither, nor even knowing why, feel only his scourge behind them, or hear his cry before. There is something that Dorjand would fain achieve, and therefore hath set the people striving, with none to cease or rest in all the worlds. But the gods of Pegāna, speaking to the gods, say, what is it that Dorjand would fain achieve? It hath been written and said that only the destinies of men are the care of Dorjand, but that even the gods of Pegāna be not unconcerned by his woe. All the gods of Pegāna have felt a fear, for they have seen a look in the eyes of Dorjand that regardeth beyond the gods. The reason and purpose of the worlds is that there would be life upon the worlds, and the life is the instrument of Dorjand wherewith he would achieve his end. Therefore the worlds go on, and the rivers run to the sea, and life ariseth and flieth even in all the worlds, and the gods of Pegāna do the work of all the gods, and all for Dorjand. But when the end of Dorjand hath been achieved, there will be no need for life upon the worlds, nor any more a game for the small gods to play. Then will Keb tiptoe gently across Pegāna to the resting place in highest Pegāna of Manayud Sushai, and touching reverently his hand, the hand that wrought the gods, say Manayud Sushai, thou hast rested long. I have to hear this every night. It's horrible. Like, how... I don't even know what they're saying. And I don't know how you could have so much to just scream about every night. It's crazy. It's baffling. I don't understand it. And Manayud Sushai shall say, not so, for I have rested for about 50 eons of the gods, each of them scarce more than 10 million mortal years of the worlds that ye have made. And then shall the gods be afraid when they find that Mana knoweth that they have made the worlds while he rested. And they shall answer, nay, but the worlds came all of themselves. Then Manayud Sushai, as one who would have done the irksome matter, will lightly wave his hand, the hand that wrought the gods, and there shall be gods no more. When there shall be 3 moons towards the north, above the star of the abiding, 3 moons that neither wax nor wane, but regard towards the north. Or when the comet ceaseth, that's so, from the seeking and stand still, not any longer moving among the worlds, but tarrying as one who rests after the end of the search, then shall arise from resting, because it is the end, the greater one, who rested of old time, even Manayud Sushai. Then shall the times that there were be times no more, and it may be that the old dead days shall return from beyond the rim, and we who have wept for them shall see those days again, as one who, returning from long travel to his home, comes suddenly on dear remembered things. For none shall know of Mana, who hath rested for so long, whether he be a harsh or merciful God. It may be that he shall have mercy, and that these things shall be. waste. There lie 7 deserts beyond Badrahan, which is the city of the caravan's end. None goeth beyond. In the first desert lie the tracks of the mighty travelers outward from Badrahan, and some returning, and in the second lie only outward tracks, and none return. The third is a desert untrodden by the feet of men. And the fourth is a desert of sand, and the fifth is the desert of dust, and the sixth is a desert of stones, and the seventh is a desert of deserts. In the midst of the last of deserts that lie beyond Badrahan, in the center of deserts, standeth the image that hath been hewn of old out of living hill, whose name is Ranarada, the eye in the waist. About the base of Ranarada is carved in mystic letters that are vaster than the beds of streams these worlds. To the God who knows. Now, beyond the second desert are no tracks, and there is no water in all the 7 deserts that lie beyond Badrahan. Therefore came no man to hew the statue from the living hills, and the Ranarada was wrought by the hand of the gods. Men tell in Badrahan, where the caravans end and all the drivers of the camels rest, how once the gods hewed Ranarada from the living hill, hammering at all night beyond the deserts. Moreover, they say that Ranarada is carved in the likeness of the god Hudrazi, who hath found the secret of Manayud Sushai, and knoweth the wherefore of the making of gods. They say that Hudrazi stands all alone in Pegāna and speaks to none because he knows what is hidden from gods. Therefore, the gods have made it his image in a lonely land as one who thinks and is silent, the eye of the waste. They say that Hudrazi had heard the murmurs of Manayud Sushai as he muttered to himself and gleaned the meaning and knew and that he was the god of mirth and of abundant joy, but became, from the moment of his knowing of a mirthless god, even as his image, which regards the deserts beyond the track of man. But the camel drivers, as they sit and listen to the tales of old men of the marketplace of Badrahan at the evening, while the camels rest and say, if Hudrazi is so very wise, yet is sad, let us drink wine and banish wisdom to the wastes that lie beyond Badrahan. Therefore is the feasting and laughter all night long in the city where the caravans end. All this the camel drivers tell when the caravans come in from Badrahan, but who shall credit tales that camel drivers have heard from aged men in so remote a city? Of the thing that is neither god nor beast. Seeing that wisdom is not in cities, nor happiness in wisdom, and because Yadin the prophet was doomed by the gods ere he was born to go in search of wisdom, he followed the caravans to Badrahan. There in the evening where the camels rest, when the wind of the day ebbs out into the desert, sighing amid palms its last farewells, and waving the caravan still, he sent his prayer into the wind to drift into the desert, calling to Hudrasai. And down the wind his prayer went calling, "Why do the gods endure, and play their game with men? Why doth not Skarl forsake his drumming, and Mana cease to rest?" And the echo of 7 deserts answered, "Who knows?" But out in the waste, beyond 7 deserts, where Ranarada looms enormous in the dusk, at evening his prayers were heard, and from the rim of the waste, whither had gone his prayers, came 3 flamingos flying, and their voices said, "Going south," at every stroke of their wing. But as they passed by the prophet, they seemed so cool and free in the desert, so blinding and hot, that he stretched up his arm toward them. Then it seemed happy to fly and pleasant to follow by great white wings, and he was with the 3 flamingos up in the cool above the desert, and their voices cried before them, "Going south." And the desert below him mumbled, "Who knows?" Sometimes the earth stretched up toward them with the peaks of mountains, sometimes it fell away in steep ravines. Blue rivers sang to them as they passed above them, or very faintly came to the song of breezes in lone orchards, and far away the sea sang mighty dirges of old forsaken isles. But it seemed that in all the worlds there was nothing only to be going south. It seemed that somewhere the south was calling to her own, and that they were going south. But when the prophet saw that they had passed above the edge of earth, that far away to the north lay the moon, he perceived that he was following no mortal birds, but some strange messengers of Hudrasai, whose nest had lain in one of Pegāna's vales below the mountains whereon sit the gods. Still they went south, passing by all the worlds, and leaving them to the north, till only Araxes, Zadres, and Hyraglion lay upon to the south of them, where great Engazi seemed only a point of light, and Yo and Mindo could be seen no more. Still they went south till they passed below the south and came to the rim of worlds. There is neither south, nor east, nor west, but only north and beyond. There is only north of it where lie the worlds, and beyond it where lies the silence. And the rim is a mass of rocks that there never used to be by the gods when they made the worlds. On it sat Tragul. Tragul is the thing that is neither god nor beast, and neither howls nor breathes. Only it turns over the leaves of a great book, black and white forever until the end. And all that is to be written in the book, and also that was. When it turneth a black page, it is the night, and when it turneth the white, it is day. Because it is written that there are gods, and there is writing about thee and me, until a page where our names are no more written. Then, as the prophet watched it, Tragul turned a page, a black one, and night was over, and day shone on the worlds. Tragul is the thing that men in many countries have called by many names. It is the thing that sits behind the gods, whose book is the scheme of things. then saw the old remembered days that were hidden away with part that had been turned. He knew that upon whose name is writ no more is the last page had turned forever 1,000 pages back. Then did he utter his prayer in the fact that Tragul, who only turns the pages and never answers prayer, he prayed in the face of Tragul, only turn back thy pages to the name of one who is writ no more, and far away upon a place named Earth shall rise the prayers of the little people that acclaim the name of Tragul. For there is indeed far off a place called Earth where men shall pray to Tragul. Then spake Tragul, who turns the pages and never answers prayer, and his voice was like the murmurs of the waste at night, when echoes have been lost. Though the whirlwind of the south should tug with the claws at a page that hath been turned, yet shall not be able to ever turn back. Then, because of the words in the book that said it should be so, Yadin found himself lying in the desert, where one gave him water, and afterwards carried him on a camel into Badrahan. There, some said that he had but dreamed when thirst seized him, and he wandered among the rocks in the desert. But certain aged men of Badrahan say that indeed he sitteth somewhere a thing that is called Tragul, that is neither god nor beast, that turneth the leaves of a book black and white, until he come to the words Bhai Dun Azan, which means the end forever. In the book, and the gods and worlds shall be no more. Yanath, the prophet. Yanath was the first among prophets who uttered unto men. These are the words of Yanath, the first among prophets. There be gods upon Pegāna. Upon a night I slept, and in the sleep Pegāna came very near, and Pegāna was full of gods. I saw the gods beside me, as one might see wanted things. Only I saw not Mana Yud Sushai. In that hour, in the hour of my sleep, I knew. And in the end, and in the beginning of my knowing, in all of my knowing, that there was this, that man knoweth not. Seek thou to find at night the utter edge of darkness, or seek to find the birthplace of the rainbow, where he leapeth upon the hills. Only seek not concerning the wherefore of the making of the gods. The gods have set a brightness upon a farther side of the things to come, that they may appear more felicitous to men than things that are. To the gods, the things that come are but the things that are, and nothing altereth in Pegāna. The gods, although not merciful, are not ferocious gods. They are the destroyers of days that were, but they set a glory upon the days to be. Man must endure the days that are, but the gods have left him his ignorance as a solace. Seek not to know, thy seeking will weary thee, And thou will return much worn to rest at last about the place from whence thou settest upon seeking. Seek not to know, even I, Yonath, the oldest prophet, burdened with the wisdom of great years, and worn with seeking, know only that man knoweth not. Once I set out seeking to know all things, now I know one thing only, and soon the years will carry me away. The path of my seeking that leadeth to seeking again must be trodden by very many more, when Yonath is no longer even Yonath. Set not thy foot upon that path, seek not to know. These be the words of Yonath. Yug, the prophet. When the years had carries away Yonath, and Yonath was dead, there was no longer a prophet among men. And still men sought to know. Therefore they said unto Yug, Be thou our prophet, and know all things, and tell us concerning the wherefore of it all. And Yug said, I know all things, and men were pleased. And Yug said of the beginning that it was in Yug's own garden, and of the end that it was in sight of Yug. And men forgot Yug. One day Yug saw Mung behind the hills, making the sign of Mung, and Yug was Yug no more. Alhireth Hotep the prophet. When Yug was Yug no more, men said unto Alhireth Hotep, Be thou our prophet, and be as wise as Yug. And Alhireth Hotep said, I am as wise as Yug. And men were very glad. And when Alhireth Hotep said of life and death, These be the affairs of Alhireth Hotep, and men brought gifts to him. One day Alhireth Hotep wrote in a book, Alhireth Hotep knoweth all things, for he hath spoken with Mung. And Mung stepped from behind him, making the sign of Mung, saying, Knowest thou all things then, Alhireth Hotep? And Alhireth Hotep became among the things that were. Kabok, the prophet. When Alhireth Hotep was among the things that were, and still men sought to know, they said unto Kabok, Be thou as wise as Alhireth Hotep. And Kabok grew wise in his own sight, and in the sight of men. And Kabok said, Mung maketh his signs against men, or withholdeth it by advice of Kabok. And when he said unto one, Thou hast sinned against Kabok, therefore will Mung make the sign of Mung against thee. And to another, Thou hast brought Kabok gifts, therefore shall Mung forbear to make against thee the sign of Mung. One night, as Kabok fattened upon the gifts that men had brought him, he heard the tread of Mung treading in the garden of Kabok about his house at night. And because the night was very still, it seemed most evil to Kabok that Mung should be treading in his garden without the advice of Kabok about his house in the night. And Kabok, who knew all things, grew afraid, for the treading was very loud, and the night still, and he knew not what lay behind the back of Mung, which none had ever seen. But when the morning grew to brightness, there was a light upon the worlds, and Mung trod no longer in the garden. Kabok forgot his fears, and said perhaps it was but a herd of cattle that stampede in the garden of Kabok. And Kabok went about his business, which was that of knowing all things, and telling all things unto men, and making light of Mung. But that night Mung trod again in the garden of Kabok, about his house at night, and stood before the window of the house like a shadow standing, so that Kabok knew indeed that it was Mung. And a great fear fell upon the throat of Kabok, so that his speech was hoarse, and he cried out, "Thou art Mung." And Mung slightly inclined his head, and went on to tread in the garden of Kabok, about his house at night. And Kabok lay and listened with horror at his heart. But when the second morning grew to brightness, and there was a light upon the worlds, Mung went from treading in the garden of Kabok, and for a little while Kabok hoped, but looked with great dread for the coming of the third night. And when the third night had come, and the bat had gone to his home, and the wind had sank, the night was very still. And Kabok lay and listened, to whom the night of the wings flew very slow. But ere the night met the morning upon the highway between Pegāna and the worlds, there came the tread of Mung in the garden of Kabok toward Kabok's door. And Kabok fled out of his house as flees a hunted beast, and flung himself before Mung. And Mung made the sign of Mung, pointing toward the end. And the fears of Kabok had rest from troubling Kabok anymore, for they and he were among accomplished things. Sorry, I'm just adjusting, getting a little uncomfy. Of the calamity that befell Unawara by the sea, and of the building of the tower of the ending of days. When Kabok and his fears had rest, the people sought a prophet who should have no fear of Mung, whose hand was against the prophets. And at last they found Unawara, who tended the sheep and had no fear of Mung. And the people brought him to the town, that he might be their prophet. Then Unawara built a tower towards the sea that looked upon the setting of the sun, and he called it the Tower of the Ending Days. And about the ending of the day would Unawara go up on his tower top, and look towards the setting of the sun to cry his curses against Mung, crying, "O Mung, whose hand is against the sun, whom men abhor but worship, because they fear thee. Here stands and speaks a man who fears thee not. Assassin, lord of murder and dark things, abhorrent, merciless, make thou the sign of Mung against me, when thou will, but until silence settles upon my lips, because of the sign of Mung, I will curse Mung to his face." And the people in the street below would gaze up in wonder towards Unilara, who had no fear of Mung, and brought him gifts. Only in their homes, after the falling of the night, would they pray again with reverence to Mung. But Mung said, "Shall a man curse a god?" And still Mung came not nigh to Unilara, as he cried his curses against Mung from the tower towards the sea. And Sish, throughout the worlds, hurled time away, and slew the hours that had severed him well, and called up more upon the timeless waste that lieth beyond worlds, and drave them forth to assail all things. And Sish cast a whiteness over the hairs of Unilara, and ivy about his tower, and weariness over his limbs, for Mung passed by him still. When Sish became a god less durable to Unilara than ever, Mung hath been ceased at last to cry from the tower's tops his curses against Mung whenever the sun went down, till there came a day when the weariness of the gift of Keb fell heavily upon Unilara. When the tower of the ending of days did Unilara cry out thus to Mung, crying, "O Mung, O loveliest of the gods, O Mung, most dearly to be desired, thy gift of death is the heritage of man, with ease and rest and silence in returning to the earth. Keb giveth but toil and trouble. In Sish he sendeth regrets with each of his hours, wherewith he assails the world. Cometh nigh no more. I can no longer be glad with whimpering tongue. When the other gods forsake him, a man hath only Mung." But Mung said, "Shall a man curse a god?" And every day and all night long did Unilara cry aloud, "Ah, now for the hour of the mourning of many, in the pleasant garlands of flowers and tears, in the moist dark earth. Ah, for the repose down underneath the grass, where the firm feet of the trees grip upon the world, where never shall come to the wind that now blows through my bones, and the rain shall come warm and trickling, not driven by storm, where is the easeful falling asunder of bone from the bone and dark." Thus prayed Unilara, who had cursed in his folly and youth, while never heeded Mung. Still, from a heap of bones that are Unilara, still lying still lying about the ruined base of the tower that once he built, goes up a shrill voice with the wind, crying out for the mercy of Mung, if any such there be. of how Imban became high prophet in Aradek, and all of the gods save one. Imban was made high prophet of Aradek, of all the gods save one. From Ardra, Rudra, in the lands beyond all the high prophets of the earth, to the temple of Aradek, of all the gods save one. And then they told Imban how the secret of things was upon the summit of the dome of Hall of Night, but faintly writ in an unknown tongue. Midway in the night, between the setting and the rising sun, they led Imban into the Hall of the Night, and said to him, chanting together, Imban, 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 look upon the roof, where is writ the secret of things, but faintly and in an unknown tongue. And Imban looked up, but the darkness was so deep within the Hall of Night that Imban saw not even the high prophets who came from Ardra, Rudra, in the lands beyond, nor saw aught the Hall of Night at all. Then called the high prophets, What seest thou, Imban? And he replied, I see not. Then called the high prophets, What knowest thou, Imban? He replies, I know not. Then spake the high prophet of Eld with all the gods save one, who is the first on earth of prophets. O Imban, we have all looked upwards in the hall of night toward the secret of things, and ever it was dark, and the secret faint in an unknown tongue, and now thou knowest what all high prophets know. And Imban answered, I know. So Imban became high prophet of Aradek, and all the gods save one, and prayed for all the people who knew not that there was darkness in the hall of night, or that the secret was writ faint in an unknown tongue. These are the words of Imban that he wrote in a book, that the people might know. In the 20th night of the 900th moon, as the night came up from the valley, I performed the mystic rites of each of the gods in the temple, as is my wont, lest any of the gods should grow angry in the night, and wherein us while we slept. And as I uttered the last of certain secret words, I fell asleep in the temple, for I was weary, with my head against the altar of Dorjand. Then in the stillness, as I slept, there entered Dorjand by the temple, in the guise of a man, and touched me on the shoulder, and I awoke. But when I saw that his eyes shone blue and lit the whole temple, I knew he was a god, though he came in a mortal disguise. And Dorjand said, Prophet of Dorjand, behold, that the people may know. And he showed me the paths of Sish, stretching far down the future time, and then he bade me arise and follow whither he pointed, speaking no words, but commanding with his eyes. Therefore, set upon the 20th night of the 900th moon, I walked with Dorjand adown the paths of Sish into the future time. Looks like it went out of focus. That's better. And ever beside me the way of men did slay men, and the sum of their slaying was greater than the slaying of the pestilence of any of the evils of the gods. And the cities arose and shed their houses in dust, and ever the desert returned again to its own, and covered over and hid the last of all that troubled its repose. And still men slew men, and I came at the last to a time when men set upon their yoke, no longer upon the beasts, but made them beasts of iron. And after that did men slay men with mists. Then, because of the slaying exceeded their desire, there came a peace upon the world that was brought by the hand of the slayer, and men slew men no more. And cities multiplied and overthrew the desert and conquered its repose. And suddenly I beheld that the end was near, for there was a stirring above Pegāna, as one who grew weary of resting, and I saw that the hound of time crouched into his spring, with his eyes upon the throats of the gods, shifting from throat to throat, and drumming of Scarl grew faint. And if a god may fear, it seemed that there was fear upon the face of Dorajand, and he seized me by the hand and led me back along the paths of time, that I might not see the end. Then I saw cities rise out of the dust again, and fall back into the desert whence they had arisen. And I slept in the temple of all of the gods save one, with my head against the altar of Dorajand. Then, again, the temple was alight, but not with the light of the eyes of Dorajand. Only dawn came all the blue out of the east, and shone through the arches of the temple. Then I awoke and performed the morning rites and mysteries of a god save one, lest any of the gods be angry in the day and take away the sun. How Imban met Zodrak. The prophets of the gods lay resting by the river to watch the stream run by. And as he lay, he pondered on the scheme of things in the works of the gods. And it seemed to the prophet of the gods, as he watched the stream run by, that the scheme was a right scheme, and the gods were benign gods. Yet for the sorrow of the worlds, it seemed that Keb was bountiful, that Mung calmed all that suffer, and Sish dealt not too harshly with the hours, and that the gods were good, yet there was sorrow in the worlds. Then said the prophet of the gods, as he watched the stream run by, there is some other god of whom naught is writ. And suddenly the prophet was aware of an old man who bemoaned beside the river, crying, "Alas, alas." His face was marked by the sign and the seal of exceeding many years, and there was yet a figure in his frame. These be the words of the prophet that he wrote in his book. I said, "Who art thou that bemoans beside the river?" And he answered, "I am the fool." I said, "Upon my brow are the marks of wisdom, such as is stored in books." He said, "I am Zodrak. Thousands of years ago, I tended sheep upon the hill that sloped towards the sea. The gods have many moods. Thousands of years ago, they were in a mirthful mood. They said, 'Let us call upon the man before us that we may laugh in Pegāna.'" They're going at it again. They are doing the chanting again. and their eyes that looked on me saw not me alone, but also saw the beginning and the end, and all the worlds besides. Then said the gods, speaking in the speak of gods, Go, back to thy sleep. But I, who am the fool, had heard it said on the earth, that whoso seeth the gods upon Pegāna becometh as the gods. If so, he demand to see their faces, who may not slay him, who hath looked upon the eyes. And I, the fool, I have looked upon the eyes of the gods, and I demand what a man may demand of the gods when he hath seen them in Pegāna. And the gods inclined their heads, and Hudrasai said, It is the law of the gods. And I, who was only a shepherd, how could I know? I said, I will make men rich. And the gods said, What is rich? And I said, I will send them love. And the gods said, What is love? And I sent gold to the worlds, and alas, I sent with poverty and strife. And I sent love to the worlds, and it was with grief. And now I have mixed gold and love most woefully together, and I can never remedy what I have done. For the deeds of the gods are done, and nothing may undo them. Then I said, I will give men wisdom, that they may be glad. And those who got my wisdom found that they knew nothing, and from nothing, having been happy, became glad no more. And I, who have made men happy, have made them sad, and I have spoiled the beautiful scheme of the gods. And now my hand is forever the handle of their plow, and I have only been a shepherd, and how should I have known? Now I come to thee, as thou restest upon the river, to ask of thee thy forgiveness, for I fain have the forgiveness of man. And I have answered, O Lord of 7 skies, whose children are the storms, shall a man forgive a god? He answered, Men have sinned not against the gods, as the gods have sinned against men, since I have came into their councils. And I, the prophet, answered, O Lord of 7 skies, whose plaything is the thunder, thou art amongst the gods. What need hast thou for words from any man? He said, Indeed, I am amongst the gods, who speak to me as they speak to other gods. Yet there is always a smile about their mouths, and a look in their eyes that saith, Thou wert a man. I said, O Lord of the 7 skies, about whose feet the worlds are drifted sand, because thou biddest me, I, a man, forgive thee. And he answered, I was but a shepherd, and I could not know. Then he was gone. Pegāna. The prophet of the gods cried out to the gods, of all the gods save one, for none may pray to Mana Yutsushai. Where shall the life of a man abide, when Mung hath made against his body the sign of Mung? For the people with whom ye play have sought to know. But the gods answered, speaking through the mist. though thou shouldst tell thy secrets to the beasts, even that the beasts should understand, yet will not the gods divulge the secret of the gods to thee, that gods and beasts and men shall be all the same, all knowing the same things. That night Yaharnathwai came to Aradek and said unto Imban, Wherefore wouldst thou know the secret of the gods, that not the gods may tell thee? When the wind blows not, where then is the wind? Or when thou art not living, where art thou? When should the wind care for the hours of calm, or thou for death? Thy life is long, eternity is short. So short that shouldest thou die, and eternity should pass, and after the passing of eternity thou shouldest live again, thou wouldst say, I closed my eyes but for an instant. There is an eternity behind thee as well as one before. Hast thou bewailed the eons that have passed without thee? Who art so much afraid of the eons that shall pass? Then said the prophet, How shall I tell the people that the gods have not spoken, and their prophet doth not know? For then should I be a prophet no longer, and another would take the people's gifts instead of me? Then said Imban to the people, The gods have spoken, saying, O Imban, our prophet, it is as the people believe, whose wisdom hath discovered the secret of the gods. And the people, they die, shall come to Pegāna, and there live with the gods, and there have pleasure without toil. And Pegāna is a place all white with the peaks of mountains, on each of them a god, and a people shall lie upon the slopes of the mountains, each under the god that he had worshipped the most, when his lot was in the worlds. And there shall music beyond the dreaming come drifting through the scent of the orchards in the worlds, with somewhere someone singing an old song that shall be as a half-remembered thing. And there shall be gardens that have always sunlight, and streams that are lost in no sea beneath skies forever blue. And there shall be no rain nor regrets, only the roses that in the highest Pegāna have achieved their prime shall shed their petals in showers at thy feet. And only far away on the forgotten earth shall voices drift up to thee and cheer thee in their childhood about the gardens of thy youth. If thou sighest for any memory of earth, because thou hearest unforgotten voices, then will the gods send messengers on wings to soothe thee in Pegāna, saying to them, There is one sigheth who hath remembered earth, and they shall make Pegāna more seductive for thee still, and they shall take thee by the hand and whisper in thine ear, till old voices are forgot. And besides the flowers of Pegāna, there shall have climbed by them, it hath reached Pegāna, the rose that clambered about the house where thou hast been born. Moreover, as thou sittest on the orchard lawns that clothe Pegāna's mountains, and as thou hearkened to the melody that sways the souls of the gods, there shall stretch away far down beneath thee the great unhappy earth, till gazing from the rapture upon sorrows, thou shalt be glad that thou wert dead. And from the three great mountains that that stand aloof, and over the others, Grimble, Zeeble, and Trehugable shall blow in the wind of the morning, in the wind of the day, borne upon the wings of all the butterflies that have died upon the worlds, to cool the gods in Pegāna. Far through the Pegāna, a silvery fountain, whirled upon by the gods from the central sea, shall fling its waters aloft, and over the highest peaks of Pegāna, above Trehugable, shall burst into gleaming mists, to cover highest Pegāna, and make a curtain about the resting place of Mana-Yud-Sushai. Alone, still, and remote below the base of one of the inner mountains, lieth a great blue pool. Whoever looketh down upon the waters may behold all his life that was upon the worlds, and all the deeds that he has done. None walked by the pool, and none regarded steps, for all Pegāna has suffered, and all have sinned some sin, and it lieth in the pool, and there is no darkness in Pegāna, for when night hath conquered the sun, and stilled the worlds, and turned the white peaks of Pegāna into grey, then shine the blue eyes of the gods like sunlight on the sea. Where each gods sit upon the mountain, and at last, upon some afternoon, perhaps in summer, shall the gods say, speaking to the gods, what is the likeness of Mana-Yud-Sushai, and what the end? And then shall Mana-Yud-Sushai drop back with his hands the mists that cover his resting, saying, this is the face of Mana-Yud-Sushai, and this is the end. Then said the people to the prophet, shall not black hills draw round in some forsaken land, to make a veil-wide cauldron, wherein the molten rock shall seethe and roar, and where the crags of a mountain shall be hurled upon the surface, and bubble and go down again, that there our enemies may boil forever? And the prophet answered, it is writ large about the bases of Pegāna's mountains, upon which sit the gods, thine enemies are forgotten. Of how Imban spake of the death to the king. There trod such pestilence in Aradec. The king, as he looked abroad out his palace, saw men die, and when the king saw death, he feared that one day even the king should die. Therefore he commanded guards to bring before him the wisest prophet that should ever be found in Aradec. Then heralds came to the temple of all the gods, save one, and cried aloud, having first commanded silence, crying, Razahan, king over Aradec, prince by right of Ildun and Ildon, and prince by conquest of Pathia, Ezek, and Ajan, lord of the hills, to the high prophet of all the gods save one, sends salutations. Then they bore him before the king, and the king said unto the prophet, O prophet of all the gods save one, shall I indeed die? And the prophet answered, O king, thy people may not rejoice forever, and some day the king will die. And the king answered, this may be so, but certainly thou shalt die. It may be that one day I shall die, but till then the lives of the people are in my hands. Then the guards led the prophet away. And there arose prophets in Eredek, who spake not of death to kings of Ood. Men say that thou comest to Sundari, beyond all the plains, and shalt climb to his summit before thou art seized by the avalanche which sitteth always on his slopes. And then there lie before thee many peaks, and if thou shalt climb these and cross their valleys, of which there be 7, and also 7 peaks, thou shalt come to the last and of the land of the forgotten hills, where amid many valleys white snow there standeth the great temple of one God only. Therein is a dreaming prophet who doeth not, and a drowsy priesthood about him. Sorry, I'm getting a little even more uncomfy. These are the priests of Mana Yutsushai. Within the temple it is forbidden to work. Also it is forbidden to pray. Night differeth not from day within its doors. They rest as Mana rests, and the name of the prophet is Ood. Ood is a greater prophet than any of the other prophets of earth, and it hath been said by some that were Ood and his priests to pray, chanting all together and calling upon Mana Yutsushai, that Mana would awake, for surely he would hear the prayers of his own prophet. Then would there be worlds no more. There is also another way to the land of the forgotten hills, which is a smooth road and a strait that lies through the heart of the mountains. But for certain hidden reasons, it were better for thee to go by the peaks and snow. Even thou shouldst perish that way, and thou shouldst seek, that is so difficult to say, to come to the house of Ood by the smooth, straight road. The river. Sorry, let me get a drink. Last one. There arises a river in Pegāna that is neither a river of water nor yet a river of fire. And it flows through the skies in the worlds of the rim of the worlds, a river of silence. Through the worlds are sounds, the noises of moving, and the echoes of voices and song. But upon the river there is no sound ever heard, for there all echoes die. The river arises out of the drumming of Skarl, and flows forever behind the banks of thunder, until it comes to the waste beyond worlds, behind the furthest star, down the sea of silence. I lay in the desert beyond the cities of sounds, and above me flowed the river of silence through the sky, and on the desert's edge night fought against the sun, and suddenly conquered. Then, on the river, I saw the dream-built ship of the god Yaharnath-Lahai, whose great prow lifted gray into the air above the river of silence. Her timbers were olden dreams dreamed long ago, and poets' fancies made her tall, straight masts, and her rigging was wrought out of the people's hopes. Upon her deck were rowers and dream-made oars, and the rowers were the people of men's fancies, and princes of old story, and people who had died, and people who had never been. These swung forward and swung back to row Yaharnathwahai through the worlds, with never a sound of rowing. For forever on every wind float up to the Pegāna, to the hopes and the fancies and the people which have no home in the worlds. And there Yaharnathwahai weaves them into dreams and take them to the people again. And every night in the dream-built ship Yaharnathwahai settleth forth, and all his dreams on board, to take again their old hopes back to the people and all forgotten fancies. But ere the day comes back to her own again, and all the conquering armies of the dawn hurl their red lances in the face of night, Yaharnathwahai leaves the sleeping worlds and rows back up the river of silence that flows from Pegāna into the sea of silence that lies beyond the worlds. And the name of the river is Imrana, the river of silence. All that be weary of the sound of cities and the very tired clamor creep down from the night time to Yaharnathwahai's ship, and going abroad it among the dreams and the fancies of old times, lie upon the deck and pass from sleeping to the river, while Mung behind them makes the sign of Mung, because they would have it so. And lying there upon the deck among their own remembered fancies and songs that were never sung, and they drift up Imrana ere the dawn, where the sound of the cities becomes not, nor the voice of the thunder is heard, nor the midnight howl of pain as he gnaws at the bodies of men. And far away the forgotten bleat the small sorrows of the trouble of all the worlds. But where the river flows through Pegāna's gates, between the great twin constellations, Yum and Gothum, where Yum stands sentinel upon the left and Gothum upon the right, there sits Sarami, the Lord of all forgetting. And when the ship draws near, Sarami looketh upon his sapphire eyes into the faces and beyond of those that the weary of cities, and that the gazes as one looketh before him, remembering not. He gently waves his hands, and amid the waving of Sarami's hands, there fall from all that behold him all their memories, save certain things that may not be forgotten, even beyond the worlds. It hath been said that when Skarl ceases to drum, and Mana Yutsushai awakes, and the gods of Pegāna know that it is the end, that the gods will enter the galleons of gold, and with dream-born rowers glide down Imrana, who knows whither or why, till they come to the river, and there's a silent sea, and shall there be gods of nothing, where nothing is, and never a sound shall come, and far away upon the river's banks shall bay their old hound time, that shall seek and rend their masters, while Mana Yutsushai shall think of some other plan concerning gods and worlds. The bird of doom in the end. For at the last shall thunder, fleeing to escape from the doom of gods, roar horribly among the worlds in time. The hound of the gods shall bay hungrily at his masters, because he is lean with age. In the innermost of Pegāna's vales shall the bird of doom, Mosan, whose voice is like the trumpet, soar upward with boisterous beatings of his wings above Pegāna's mountains. And the gods in there with the trumpet voice acclaim the end. Sorry, weird throat sound. Then in the tumult and amid the fury of the hound, and the gods shall make for the last time in Pegāna the sign of all the gods, and go with dignity and quiet down their galleons of gold, and shall stay away down the river of silence, not ever to return. Then shall the river overflow its banks, with the tide come setting from the silent sea, till all the worlds and skies are drowned in silence, while Mana Yutsushai, in the middle of all, sits deep in thought, in the hound time, when all the worlds and cities are swept away, whereon he used to raven, having no more to devour, shall suddenly die. But there are some that hold at this heresy of the Cygoths, that when the gods go down at last into their galleons of gold, Mung shall turn alone, and setting his back upon Trehagbul, and wielding the sword of severing, which is called death, shall fight out his last fight with the hound of time, his empty scabbard, sleep, clattering loose behind him. And the Cygoths say that for 2 days and nights the hound shall leer and snarl before the face of Mung. Days and nights shall be lit by neither sun nor moons, for these shall go dipping down the sky with all the worlds as the galleons glide away, because the gods that made them are gods no more. And then shall the hound, springing, tear out the throat of Mung, who, making for the last time the sign of Mung, shall bring down death, crashing upon the shoulders of the hound. And in the blood of time that sword shall rust away. Then shall Mana Yutsushai be all alone, with neither death nor time, and neither the hours singing in his ears, nor the swish of the passing lives. But far away from Pegāna shall go the galleons of gold that bear the gods away, upon whose faces shall be utter calm, because they are the gods, knowing that is the end. That was The Gods of Pegāna by Lord Dunsany. Had a very sore throat throughout tonight for some reason. Yeah, that was an interesting story. A little complicated because it's a bit old and it isn't very well translated to modern day vocabulary, but you know, it's not like it's in a different language or anything, so I could kind of understand it. Yeah, we should be continuing this next week. Well, I mean a different story, but I will read something else to you next week. Have not decided which one I will read yet, but we'll be back next Thursday. And other than that, I will be streaming Sunday and Tuesday. They will be gaming streams, but I will be continuing Final Fantasy VII, so look forward to that. Yeah, I hope you enjoyed, and I'm sorry, but I'm going to start saying this at the end now, because I would really like more support. I don't think that's too much to ask. Please like the video if you enjoyed it. subscribe, share, hit the bell, so on, so forth. Support me in any way you can. I would really appreciate it. It's a lot of doing for me, so just a little bit of help would be appreciated. Thanks for joining me, and I hope you have